Welcome to our Comprehensive Education Plan, or CEP, training module on progressive action steps, family and community engagement, and goal budget alignment. My name is William Manicus, and I am Senior Director of State Federal Program Implementation and Field Support within the Division of School Leadership. Let's take a look at our objectives for this webinar. First, we'll discuss creating action steps and strategies to help schools achieve their annual goals. Then, we'll talk about how to develop activities that support strong family and community engagement within your CEP. Finally, we'll look at how to review and align your budget and funding resources to your annual goals. Chancellor David C. Banks has shared the 4 pillars for building trust in New York City public schools, and these ideas live at the core of all the work we do. The first is reimagining the student experience to help activate students' passion and sense of purpose. Next is scaling, sustaining, and restoring what works. This involves identifying the amazing practices throughout our system and sharing them widely so other schools can adopt the practices. The third is prioritizing wellness and its link to student success. This is a call to support physical safety and mental health and increase our capacity to provide quality mindfulness practices that are scientifically researched, evidence-based, and culturally responsive. The fourth pillar is engaging families as true partners. This requires authentic engagement from the very beginning, and there's no better way to engage your families and your school leadership team in the CEP development process than to seek their thoughts, ideas, and opinions as you develop your action plans. Your school's thoughts and ideas around the 4 pillars should and will live in your CEP. Live, meaning that all of us must be committed to returning to, studying, and adjusting the CEP so that it becomes the roadmap for school success. When we specifically think about continuous improvement regarding the CEP, we think about 4 steps. Plan. What are we trying to improve, and what strategies will we take? Do. Actually implementing the plan as it was designed. Study. How well are we doing? Monitor both implementation and interim results. Then ask, are we on track to meet our annual goal? And finally, act. Based on what we've learned, what do we need to adjust in our strategy? Let's take a deeper look at the CEP development process next. Here is a brief overview of the CEP development process. First, we identify areas of concentration, or AOCs, which are broad topics in which the school wants to improve. They can be in academic areas, like English language arts or math, or non-academic areas, like chronic absenteeism, or elements of the supportive environment framework. Schools should begin with the areas of concentration that are required for their school level and accountability status. The iPlan portal does this automatically, so schools will see their required AOCs listed, eliminating guesswork. The next step is engaging in a comprehensive needs assessment and root cause analysis, resulting in the identification of priority needs, which will be used in Step 3 to develop SMART goals, and root causes, which will be used to inform the development of progressive action plans. Step 4 is to set progress monitoring targets that will keep the school on track toward achieving its annual goals. Step 5 is to create progressive action steps that address root causes. Step 6 emphasizes the importance of engaging family and community stakeholders by incorporating strategies that involve families and the larger community. Step 7, which is the final step in CEP development, is to align budgetary resources to each goal, making sure that they're allocated in a way that supports the school achieving its annual goals. We will focus on steps 5, 6, and 7 in this webinar. Our first major topic in this session is Step 5, creating progressive action steps. An action plan serves as the school's roadmap, outlining the steps for achieving annual goals and making them transparent to the school community. The action plan includes the specific activities and strategies that the school believes will help it achieve its goals. Some elements of strong action plans include clear timeframes, action steps that build on each other in a progressive fashion, strategies that target the specific needs of student subgroups, tiered academic and social-emotional interventions, and partnerships that result in true family-community engagement. Schools develop an action plan for each area of concentration. Action plans represent the best collective thinking from the school community and are grounded in evidence, research, and professional development. They may include specific types of professional learning, such as instructional coaching, or specific strategies designed to improve outcomes for a group of students. Examples of this would be common planning for teachers of students with disabilities, or specific instructional interventions for small groups of students who have a common need. Action plans should also include activities that engage families and the larger community, including community-based organizations that the school has a relationship with. Each action plan is completed in iPlan, just like the rest of the CEP. When detailing your school's activities and strategies in iPlan, be sure to include the start and end date for each activity. Some may be shorter in duration, while others may last the entire school year. We've included a section for activities that occur from August through January, and another for activities that occur from February to June, much like the semester schedule. Remember that impactful action plans include a progression of activities that build upon one another and help put the school on a path toward achieving its annual goals. When developing your school's action plans, you don't necessarily need to start from scratch each year. Begin by reflecting back upon the previous year's activities and strategies and discuss them with the SLT. What was successful last year? How do you know it worked? Are there opportunities to revise something that wasn't quite as successful as you might have hoped? What new activities or strategies might the SLT consider to support achieving this goal? All of these questions can spark dialogue around how to best develop, update, or revise your action plan as needed. When selecting strategies and activities to accomplish your key objectives, schools should research and brainstorm a list of possible strategies from evidence-based best practices. Consider the latest professional literature from sources like ASCD or the Marshall Memo as you research strategies. Schools should consider resources that can be leveraged, such as school-level knowledge and expertise, professional networks, the instructional leadership team, instructional coaches, vendors, and/or district or central teams. In order to accomplish the school's objectives and meet its annual goals, professional development of staff must be provided in order to build their capacity and support their professional learning. Schools should consider what types of learning opportunities will be provided on implementing the strategies and activities in each of the action plans. This should include professional development. What data points, instructional and non-instructional, will be analyzed to determine if the action plan is having its intended impact? And if it is not, what adjustments need to be made? This will likely include data review and progress monitoring. Schools that have been identified for improvement by New York State, which includes receivership, comprehensive support and improvement, CSI, or targeted support and improvement, TSI schools, have additional requirements to fulfill within their CEPs. One of those requirements is selecting an evidence-based intervention, or EBI. As we mentioned before, action plans should be grounded in evidence. So while this is only required of identified schools, schools in good standing may want to look at EBIs when developing their action plans as well. Identified schools have 3 options for selecting an EBI: choosing from one of the list of state-supported strategies, which includes instructional coaching, professional learning communities, and principal leadership development, as well as others. The next option is to select an EBI from one of the research clearinghouses, and the last one is to submit their own research using the evidence review process. Multi-tiered Systems of Support, or MTSS, is a comprehensive system that screens all students and provides targeted interventions as needed. It is an umbrella term comprising of other systems of support that many schools use, such as Response to Intervention, RTI, and Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports, PBIS, It is a vital part of the action plan since it encompasses a school's universal Tier 1 instruction and articulates the targeted and selective Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions that support students with additional needs. Within an MTSS framework, all students receive core instruction as the foundation for learning. Students who are academically at risk based on their performance in class and on screening assessments are provided supplemental support. This first layer of additional support, Tier 2, occurs outside of the time dedicated to core instruction in smaller groups and focuses primarily on providing increased opportunities to practice and learn skills taught in the core. If Tier 2 support does not result in improvement, students are provided Tier 3 support. Compared to Tier 2, Tier 3 is more explicit, focuses on remediation of skills, is provided for a longer duration of time, both in overall length of intervention and regularly scheduled minutes of instructional time, and occurs in smaller groups and possibly individually. Depending on student need, Tier 2 and Tier 3 can include behavioral and/or academic supports. Let's take a brief look at the MTSS section in iPlan. Schools are asked to research evidence-based supports to be provided to students who need them. Then, categorize the supports as Tier 2 or Tier 3. Describe the criteria for determining who will receive the service. Provide the program type or strategy. List the delivery model, for example, is it small group or individual? When the service is provided, for example, is it before, during, or after school? And finally, if a technology-based tool or program is being used. As we wrap up the portion of the module that supports action planning, we'd like to briefly step back to show the progression of how we got here. In Step 2, Engage in a Needs Assessment, we looked at big picture priority needs, analyzed data trends, and asked questions to determine root causes. If we're developing the CEP with fidelity, our action steps should not only align to our SMART goals that were developed in Step 3 and our progress measures and targets from Step 4, but also our action plan activities and strategies should clearly set out a plan to address the root causes identified in Step 2. There should be a clear through line showing how the action steps will address the needs determined near the beginning of the process. As you review your action steps for alignment, we also suggest using language like ensure, develop, and establish. These words foster a sense of shared accountability for the outcomes, as opposed to provide or implement, which are more passive. Our next major topic in this session is Step 6, Developing Family and Community Strategies. Family and community engagement is absolutely critical for the successful execution of your action plan. The school community, inclusive of students' families and the outside community, are assets to be leveraged in ensuring positive outcomes. As Chancellor Banks has said, parents and community partners are key if we are going to continuously improve our school system. Schools that engage families and the broader community have higher achievement levels and greater success. Schools should consider what strategies they will implement to support families and communities in their understanding of the annual goals and action plans, and how they might support students outside of school. As SLTs develop their family and community engagement strategies, they can consider the reflection questions on this slide to support the conversation. What have we done? How effective has it been? And what can we do differently to bring families and the community more fully into the life of the school? Schools should also ensure that these activities and strategies are aligned with the Parent and Family Engagement Policy and School Parent Compact. As we have highlighted during this section of the webinar, there are many positive outcomes when families are more engaged with their children's school community, including a more positive learning environment and school culture, stronger social emotional supports, additional support for programs that improve student achievement, increased community awareness, improved student attendance and graduation rates, and of course, promoting parent involvement by planning activities that improve student achievement. Here are some examples of workshops and/or programs schools can consider when thinking about family and community engagement. Please note that this is not meant to be a complete list, but rather some suggestions that may spark further conversation. The left column includes potential workshop topics, while the right side has potential programs for experiences that may be sustained over a longer period of time. Let's take a brief look at the Parent and Family Engagement section in iPlan. SLTs should be sure to include the start and end date for each activity. Ranges are fine if the exact dates have not yet been determined. They should also include a brief description of the strategy or activity. And finally, be sure to list any partner organizations, either internal or external community-based organizations, with which the school may be working. Our last major topic in this session is Step 7, aligning the budget to the goal. As you review and align your fiscal resources, please be reminded that the principal is responsible for developing the school-based budget using all student data available in consultation with the SLT and ensuring that it is aligned with the CEP. The SLT is responsible for developing the school's CEP and ensuring that it is aligned with the school-based budget. SLTs must use a consensus-based decision-making process. For details and guidance, refer to Chancellor's Regulation A655. It is also the principal's responsibility to ensure that the budget supports educational priorities and that all expenditures align with allocated funding levels. In the next slide, we're going to examine the different types of funding available to the principal. Titled programs provide federal funding administered through New York State to help schools enhance their current education program and provide opportunities to maximize student learning. Title I is the largest source of federal funding for most New York City schools and is used to improve basic programs and help ensure that all children meet challenging state standards. Title II provides funding for professional learning for teachers and school leaders. Title III provides language instruction for multilingual learners. Title IV supports a well-rounded education, safe and healthy students, and technology. Schools also apply for competitive grants, sometimes individually and sometimes as part of a larger group application. These are all supplemental funding sources beyond the basic funding to operate the school. On this slide, we have a graphic representation of the school's budget. We often use a pyramid analogy when describing the funding process, where each level of the pyramid becomes a little bit smaller and supports a more specific portion of the student population. You will note that the base of a school's budget is its tax levy funding, and that supports the core requirements. The next level includes programs required to address the needs of special populations, such as the needs of students with disabilities or multilingual and/or English language learners. Then you come to the supplemental programs to provide additional supports such as small group instruction, and finally you have the enrichment programs such as after-school STEM or clubs at the very top. Let's take a look at the Budget and Resource Alignment section in iPlan. This is where you will align your instructional goals with your fiscal resources. Every school needs to complete the chart for each area of concentration within the Action Plan section. Now let's discuss how a school can leverage its resources to achieve its annual goals and implement its action plan. We are going to go over the headers on the chart. The first is Human Resources, where the school describes how it will align human capital to support successful implementation of the action plan for this area of concentration, including staffing categories, please don't mention specific people's names, per session, or per diem staff as needed. The next header is Instructional Resources, which may include curriculum, programs, or interventions. The third row addresses schedule adjustments, which may include supplementary programs before, during, or after school that result in schedule changes. Is the school planning to free up teachers to participate in professional learning? This would also include the expenses associated with those adjustments. And finally, the last row lists other resources, which would capture any resources that haven't been addressed elsewhere. We'd also like to briefly mention the role of superintendents in the budget and goal alignment process. As the community and instructional leader tasked with ensuring quality for each school in his or her portfolio, the superintendent and his or her designees may provide additional guidance and input on instructional approaches or support needs that may affect a school's budget. The superintendent shall review the proposed school-based budget, the principal's written justification demonstrating that the proposed school-based budget is aligned with the school's CEP, and the SLT's comments on the principal's written justification, if any. For more details and guidance, please refer to Chancellor's Regulation B801. Let's briefly discuss conceptual consolidation in Title I school-wide programs. Consolidating funds in a school-wide program means that a school treats the funds it is consolidating like they are a single pool of funds. By consolidating funds from federal, state, and local sources, a school-wide program can address its needs using all of the resources available to it. This gives a school more flexibility in how it uses available resources to meet the identified needs of its students. The school uses funds from this consolidated school-wide pool to support any activity of the school-wide program without regard to which program contributed the specific funds used for a particular activity. To complete this section, the school should enter the funding amount from its AC totals in Galaxy that it receives for Title I through Title IV, as well as tax levy funding under Fair Student Funding. Verify in column A that it is using that funding, and enter the area or areas of concentration that the funding supports. For example, if Title I Part A funding is used to support an after-school program that provides supplemental instruction in ELA and math, that program should be described in the ELA and math action plans, respectively, and ELA and math should be listed in column B on the far right side of the screen. For any funding sources that the school does not receive, for example, a school must have a certain number of English language learners to qualify for Title III funding, the school can enter NA. As we wrap up our webinars on CEP development, we want to revisit the continuous improvement cycle via the Plan, Do, Study, Act process. If you followed along with us throughout the webinar series, your plan should be nearing completion. The next step is to do. Implement it with fidelity. In simple terms, do what you said you were going to do. Then, study the results. Have you met your progress targets? If so, great. How can you build or expand on that work? If not, reflect on what didn't go as planned and take action or act and revise your action plan. As always, we encourage you to reach out to your Director of State-Federal Program Implementation for any questions or to continue the conversation around educational planning. For technical assistance with iPlan, please email iplan@schools.nyc.gov. These links are also included in the description below. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this webinar, and we wish you continued success during the 2022-23 school year.